Part 1. The lie wrapped in Rose's Mother's Day used to mean laughter, warm pie, and my son's little arms hugging me tight. But this year, it came with a chill. Ethan, my only boy, now a hotshot businessman in Dallas, pulled up in his fancy Tesla, walked in with a bouquet so bright it looked like it was trying to cheer up my old living room. "Hey, Mum," he said, flashing that PR smile. The kind you give the media, not your mama. He set the flowers down and looked around. "So my wife's still sending you that $5,000 every month, right? Just checking you're all good." I froze. My heart skipped like a bad record. "A 5,000? I whispered. "Honey, I've been getting by with church food boxes." He blinked, confused. That's when she showed up, Vanessa. Designer dress, $1,000 heels, and a perfume cloud that hit before she did. She smiled like sugar, but her eyes, ice cold. "Oh, Mum," she said, voice dripping fake sweetness. "I come by every month for the money. Maybe you just forgot, bless your heart." Forgot? I might be old, but I ain't senile. I remember every check, every penny, every soul who's ever helped me. And trust me, that woman hadn't dropped off a dime. I just smiled small. "Well, maybe it got lost somewhere," I said, my hands shaking under the table. Ethan frowned. "I'll check the accounts, Mom. It's probably a mix-up." I nodded, poured him some orange juice and watched as Vanessa wrapped her hand around his arm like she owned him and my silence. When they finally left, the house felt emptier than before. I sat there, staring at the flowers wilting on the table. $5,000 a month, 8 months, $40,000. That's not a mix-up, that's a straight-up betrayal. I pulled out my old notebook, the one with grocery lists and Sunday prayers, and wrote 3 shaky words. "I don't trust smiles." Then under it, in darker ink, "Find the truth." Because something inside me, in that old mother's gut, whispered this wasn't forgetfulness. It was a setup. And I was done playing the fool. You ever seen what happens when a sweet old lady stops praying for peace and starts fighting for truth? Stay tuned for part 2, because this mama's about to dig up secrets that'll make even the devil sweat. The next morning hit different. The sun was up, but my house felt cold. That kind of cold that doesn't come from weather, but from truth hiding in the walls. I sat at my little kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, staring at the flowers Ethan brought. They were already drooping. Egg. Kinda poetic, huh? Beautiful things dying fast. I kept replaying his words in my head. "My wife still sends you $5,000 every month, right?" Lord, that sentence had been ringing in my ears all night. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I'd been living on. Soup cans from the church pantry, hand-me-down coats from kind neighbors, and prayers whispered in the dark. Ain't no $5,000 showing up anywhere near my mailbox. So that morning I got dressed, tied my scarf, and took the bus to First Texas Community Bank. Teller, a sweet girl named Molly, smiled and asked, "How can I help you, ma'am?" "A baby," I said softly. "And my son's been sending me money every month. Or so he says. Can you check if there's been any deposits?" She typed for a minute, her eyes flicking from the screen to me. Then her face changed, gentle but apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes. No deposits here since February. Just your interest, $1.35. I nodded slowly, thanked her, and walked out, the world suddenly louder. Cars, wind, people, it all felt distant, like I was walking through a bad dream. When I got home, I sat at my old wooden table, opened that same notebook, and wrote, "Bank confirmed." No money. Lies confirmed too. Then I just sat there for a while. The old clock ticked like it was counting down to something big, and I swear I could hear my late husband's voice in my head, saying, "Maggie, don't you ever let folks treat your kindness as weakness." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind scraping against the window. The truth was knocking, and I was done ignoring it. I pulled out the notebook again and wrote one more line. Tomorrow, I start watching. Because from now on, every word, every visit, every fake smile from Vanessa was going to be written down. And one day, those pages would speak louder than her perfume ever could. But what happens when a mother's quiet suspicion turns into a full-blown investigation? In part 3, Vanessa's lies start slipping, and the old lady she underestimated, she's just getting warmed up. So she's been cashing my son's love. Under my name. Bennett nodded. Yes, ma'am. And she's been using the company card too. Spa trips, jewellery, even a new car lease. Over 30 grand in 3 months. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not grief. It was colder than both. It was resolve. Mr. Bennett, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Will you help me expose her? He gave a firm nod. I will. But we'll need every receipt, every record, every shred of truth. She's slick, but not untouchable. When he left, I placed the folder in my old metal box and locked it tight. For years, I'd kept memories in that box. Photos, letters, birthday cards. Tonight, it held something heavier, justice in waiting. I whispered to myself, she wanted to steal from a mother. She's about to meet one who doesn't back down. In part 5, dinner's on. But it ain't just food getting served. Because this old mama's about to set a trap so perfect, even the devil himself would applaud. 3 days later, I decided it was time. No more quiet notebooks, no more pretending. The truth had been simmering long enough, and Sunday dinner was about to serve it hot. I called Ethan that morning. Soon, I said in my softest mama voice, how about you'll come over for dinner this weekend? Been too long since we had a proper meal together. He sounded happy. Bless his heart, still clueless. That sounds great, Mom. Clara's been talking about visiting again. Perfect, I said. Tell her, I'll make her favourite apple pie. My voice stayed calm, but inside my pulse was marching like a war drum. That Sunday, I cooked all day. Honey-roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, cornbread, and that pie. My house smelled like forgiveness, but my heart smelled like fire. I set the table just right. White cloth, polished silverware, candles. And right in the centre, a beige envelope. Neat and innocent looking. Inside was every receipt Bennett had given me. At 6 sharp, I heard that shiny Lexus roll up. Ethan walked in with a big grin and a bouquet. Mum, you look great. Clara followed, flawless as ever, dripping in designer everything, her perfume thick enough to choke a saint. Mother, she said with that sugar-sweet smile, you didn't have to go to all this trouble. Honey, I said a tonight's special. We ate. We talked about the weather, the garden, everything but the storm under that table. Then I smiled and said, real casual, Clara, I just wanted to thank you for this month's $5,000. That new heater, I bolt's a blessing. She froze, just for a blink, then laughed high and fake. Oh, of course, Mother. Always happy to help. Ethan looked at her. Wait, he said slowly. I send the transfer on the 15th every month, not earlier. Silence. Clara blinked. Oh, right. The 15th, my bad, but her face said otherwise. I smiled, sipped my tea and said, guess I'll check the bank again on the 15th. Make sure the system's still working fine. She nodded too fast, her eyes darting toward the envelope on the table like she could feel what was inside. When they left, Ethan kissed my cheek, still clueless. But I saw it, that tiny flicker of doubt in his eyes. The seed was planted. I watched the Lexus disappear down the road. That fake smile of hers burned into my mind. Then I sat at the table, opened my notebook and wrote, a dinner, success. Liar slipping, 15th, the day truth comes knocking. But baby, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because in part 6 that envelope opens, and what spills out ain't love or money. It's judgment day for a woman who thought she could outsmart a mother's heart. Sunday rolled around again, clear sky, warm wind, perfect night for what I called the last supper of lies. I cooked Ethan's favourite stew, set 3 plates, and placed that same beige envelope right in the middle of the table. Looked harmless, but inside, justice printed in black and white. At 7 on the dot, the Lexus slid up the driveway. Ethan walked in smiling. "Smells like heaven, Mum." "It sure does," I said. "And let's see if it still tastes holy by dessert." Then she entered Clara. Pink silk dress, pearl shining like she just robbed a jewellery ad, voice soft enough to fool angels. "A mother, what a lovely setup," she said, eyes darting toward the envelope. "Another charity thing?" "Exactly," I answered. "Tonight's dinner's all about giving and truth." We sat down, prayed, and passed the cornbread like it was just another Sunday. For a few minutes, it almost felt normal. Then I opened the envelope and slid a paper toward Ethan. "Son, I thought you might want to see who's been getting your donations these last 8 months. He frowned, scanning the page. "Recipient, Clara Hayes." "Wait, what?" His voice cracked like a branch under weight. Clara tried to laugh it off. "Oh, honey, that's a bank mix-up. I cut in calm but sharp. Then how about this one?" I flipped another page. "Spa receipts, flight tickets, new car lease. That another bank error, sweetheart." She went pale as chalk. Before she could spin another tale, a voice came from the doorway, deep, steady. "And no mistake, ma'am. It was Bennett holding another stack of papers. Every transfer traced, every signature forged. Mrs. Clara Hayes used your mother's name to steal $40,000. Ethan's jaw tightened. "To Clara, tell me that's not true." She started crying, mascara streaking like wall paint. Before I was going to pay it back, "Stop," I said quietly. "You didn't borrow. You betrayed." The room went dead silent. Even the clock seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Ethan whispered a mum. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I put my hand on his." The mistake wasn't loving her baby. It was trusting someone who never learned what love cost. Clara grabbed her purse and stormed out, heels hammering the wood like a drumline for karma. When the door slammed, the candles flickered. And just like that, peace walked back into my house. But the story ain't over. In part 7, the courthouse lights flicker. The truth hits the record books. And this mama learns that even justice can break a heart. The morning of the hearing, the Texas sky looked mean. Grey clouds stacked like they'd come to watch a fight. I stood outside the courthouse clutching my notebook, the same one that had held every lie, every date, every fake smile. My lawyer, Emilio, glanced at me and said, "You ready, Margaret?" "Oh?" I nodded. "A baby. I've been ready since the day she said you must have forgot." Inside smelled like paper, coffee, and nerves. Clara sat at the defense table in a black suit, 2 sizes too perfect, hair tied back, Pearl still trying to scream innocent. Beside her, a young lawyer looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Ethan sat behind them alone, face pale and eyes heavy, the kind of look that comes from realizing love can lie straight to your face. The judge banged the gavel. A court is now in session. Margaret Hayes versus Clara Hayes, case of elder financial exploitation. Amelia stood tall, voice crisp enough to cut glass. "Your Honor, for 8 straight months, the defendant forged documents and opened a false account under my client's name. He siphoned $40,000 meant for Mrs. Hayes's care. The evidence is here. Bank statements, forged signatures, and receipts for luxury goods." She dropped the folder on the table. It hit like thunder. Clara's lawyer jumped up. "Objection." "My client maintains it was a household misunderstanding. Mrs. Hayes is elderly and may have—" "Sir," Amelia snapped, "if forgetfulness could forge a signature, half of Texas would be rich." The courtroom snickered. Then Clara stood, crocodile tears loading. "Your Honor, my mother-in-law's been confused lately. I brought her money so many times she just doesn't remember. I never meant to hurt anyone." That's when Amelia lifted my brown leather notebook. "This," she said, "is Mrs. Hayes's confusion. 8 months of notes, every visit, every word, every lie. And every single date lines up with the bank transfers. She handed it to the judge. He flipped through, frowning deeper with every page. Then he looked up at Bennett, who sat ready in the witness chair. Mr. Bennett, you confirm these records? Yes, Your Honor, he said firmly. All authentic. Every dollar redirected by the defendant. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge sighed heavy and final. And Mrs. Clara Hayes, the court orders you to repay the full $40,000 plus fees and forbids you from accessing your husband's accounts for 5 years. Case closed. The gavel hit. 3 sharp cracks that sounded like justice itself. Clara slumped in her seat, whispering, "Ethan, please," but he just stared ahead, eyes empty. And me. I didn't feel victory. I felt release. Justice don't always feel like joy. Sometimes it just feels like breathing after almost drowning. You'd think the story ends there, but nah. In part 8, after the dust settles, this mama learns that forgiveness costs more than money, and sometimes silence is the loudest love of all. The courthouse felt colder when it emptied out. I stood outside under a grey Texas sky, rain just starting to fall, the kind that hits slow and heavy, like the world's crying for you. Ethan didn't say a word. He just stared at the wet steps, then at me. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm sorry." I really didn't know. I touched his arm. "I know you didn't, baby. You just trusted the wrong woman." He nodded, eyes glassy, then walked away into the rain. Shoulders slumped, suit soaked, heart shattered. That image burned into me more than the trial itself. Justice got served, yeah, but victory to you. It don't taste sweet when it comes with heartbreak on the side. Weeks passed. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. No calls, no texts, just the ticking of that old clock my husband gave me 40 years ago. Some nights I'd catch myself dialing Ethan's number, thumb hovering over the call button. But I never pressed it. Sometimes a mama's gotta let silence do the teaching. One June morning, I opened my laptop and saw a notification. Deposit completed successfully. $40,000. The restitution money had finally arrived. I thought I'd feel proud. Instead, I just stared at the screen, tears blurring the numbers. That money had been soaked in lies. It didn't belong to greed anymore. It needed a new purpose. So I fixed the roof, replaced the old fridge, and then donated the rest to St. Mary's Church, the same place that fed me when I had nothing. I told Reverend Cole, use it to feed someone else's mama. Maybe one who's still waiting for her son to come home. That night, the house felt light. I sat on the porch, jasmine in the air, stars finally showing up after the storm. I opened my old notebook one last time and wrote, "The money's returned." The truth too. My son lost a wife, but maybe gained his sight. Just then, headlights swept across the driveway. A car door closed. I looked up. Ethan. No suit, no bouquet, just my boy in jeans and a plain t-shirt, looking 10 years younger and a whole lot wiser. He walked up the steps and said quietly, "Mom, you still make that apple pie?" I smiled, the kind of smile that reaches all the way to the heart. "Oh, baby," I said, opening the door. I never stopped. He hugged me, tight real, no distance left. And for the first time in months, my home felt alive again. Because forgiveness ain't about forgetting what they did. It's about remembering who you are and still choosing peace. And that's how a quiet old mama in Texas turned heartbreak into justice, and justice into peace. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or counted out, remember this: never mess with a mother who still remembers every detail. It's strange, you know. When a storm passes, the world don't just go back to normal. It becomes something new. The air smells different. The
And
silence
that
hits deeper.
is how one mother
and the
turned
pain,
heartbreak
it don't
into
vanish,
justice,
but
and
it
silence
finally
into
stopped
strength.
screaming. A few
Margaret
months
Hayes
passed
didn't
since the
just fight
trial.
for money.
Four
She
rolled
fought
in,
for
painting the
truth, for
Texas
love,
trees
and
gold
for
and
every
red,
soul
the
whose
kind of
ever
colours
left
that make
behind
even the
and still
hardest
found
heart
the
slow
courage to
down.
rise again.
My
If
heart
this
looked the
story
same
touched
from
your
the
heart,
outside,
made you
but
tear,
inside,
or
everything
reminded
had
you of
changed.
someone you
No
love,
more worry over
hit that
bills,
subscribe
no more
button
wondering where
and
the
turn
next
on the bell
meal's
bell
coming
so
from.
you don't miss
Just
more stories
peace.
like this.
That
Every
quiet
week,
kind of
we
peace
bring you
earn
real
after
emotional
walking through
stories,
hell and back.
tales of love,
Ethan started
betrayal,
visiting every
second
weekend,
chances, and the
just
kind
like
of
when he was
truth that
little.
stays with you long
He'd
after
fix
the
things
video
around the
ends.
porch,
So
help with
stick around,
groceries
fam,
and stay for
because the
supper.
next story,
Sometimes he'd
it
sit
might
on the
just be the
steps
one that
drinking
feels
sweet
like
tea,
yours.
watching the sunset
Subscribe
like
now,
he was seeing
drop
the
a red
world
in the
for the
comments,
first time.
and tell
He'd
us,
say,
what
Mom,
would you
I should
do
have
if you
seen
were in
it.
Margaret's shoes?
I should have protected you. And I'd tell him, as son, the best protection ain't about money. It's about listening with your heart. You'll do better next time. He smiled at that. A real smile this time. Not the polished one he used for business deals, but the one I raised him with. One Sunday, he brought me a small wooden box. I had this made for you, he said. Inside, engraved on a brass plate, were 3 words. Find the truth. I chuckled through tears. So you were listening after all, he grinned. I guess I had a good teacher. Life got softer after that. The $40,000 restitution hit my account and I knew exactly what to do. I fixed the roof, paid off my medical bills, then took a big portion straight to St. Mary's Church. Father Cole tried to thank me, but I told him, don't thank me, Father. Thank every lie that pushed me here. If sin brought me low, truth brought me home. With the rest, I started something small, a local program for single mothers called A Margaret's Table. Every Saturday, the church kitchen opens its doors, serving hot meals and free groceries to women who just need a little push to get back on their feet. No judgment, no pity, just heart. And every woman who walks through that door, I tell her the same thing. Don't let nobody write your story but you. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I'll find myself on the porch swing, wrapped in my husband's old flannel. The stars look closer now, like they're listening. I think of all the times I almost gave up, almost believed I was forgotten. Then I whisper, you see, Frank, your boy's learning. He's finally coming home. And right then, the wind blows through the trees, carrying the smell of rain and lavender, his favourite. I like to think that's his way of saying, you did good, Maggie. Ethan still comes by. He brings pie sometimes, or coffee, or just silence. We sit together, no more fancy talk, no more pretending. Just 2 souls who've been through fire and came out human again. Before he leaves, he always hugs me tight. Longer now, like he finally understands what love costs. And every time, I whisper the same thing into his shoulder. A baby, love honest, live kind, and never forget your mama's eyes can still see through any lie. He laughs every single time. And that laugh, that's my piece. The clapperboard final rehook YouTube out row. So that's the story of Margaret Hayes, a mother who lost everything but her courage and found that truth don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes it whispers through old notebooks or in the way justice finally breathes again. And if you're listening right now, if someone's ever lied to you, betrayed you, or made you feel small, remember this, you might bend, but you don't break. Because the heart of a mother or anyone who loves real is the strongest thing on earth.